This program is proudly sponsored by Nowicki Carbone, personal injury lawyers. Welcome to Conflict of Interest. I'm Peter Farris and this is Greg Barnes. Tonight's topic is the economic crisis. Is the Treasurer, Wayne Swan, up to the job? But first, last weekend, to my great pleasure, they executed the Bali bombers.
Well, it wasn't to my great pleasure, as you know. We had this topic on the death penalty.
Yes.
I oppose the death penalty all places at all time. I'll tell you what it does say, though. It says that the members of the Bali Nine who they want to execute,
three of them
will now be executed.
Absolutely, certainly.
There's no doubt about that.
They're not going to back off them.
No, they won't. Firstly, let's just say that Wayne Swan has got a very, very tough gig. In fact, Laurie Oakes wrote last weekend, Peter, that he said no other treasurer, not even Keating during the recession of the early 90s, had as tough a job as Wayne Swan has got. I mean, this is an unprecedented economic crisis.
Well, it is, but I must say, just putting party politics aside, I think I'd rather have an experienced treasurer like Costello in the seat at the moment than someone like Swan, who obviously has hardly got a clue.
Well, we're going to talk tonight to Julie Novak from the Institute of Public Affairs. He's a research fellow who's worked in Commonwealth Treasury and also worked on Commonwealth state relations and knows a fair bit about the impact of the what's going to happen to the budget. Because I think one of the issues, Peter, that Wayne Swan is grappling with is the vanishing surplus.
Well, I think it's gone, hasn't it?
Well, look, it has. I think next year's surplus was going to be about $20 billion.
Yep.
I think that's now, he's just lost about $16 billion of that already.
And between now and that's and how far into the
and we're only 4 months into the financial year, 5 months into the financial year.
That's the government fiscal year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a real issue for the government, and it's a real issue because in the lead up to the 2010 election, they've got a series of election commitments to meet, including increases for pensioners. They've got the problem now with ABC Learning, the childcare company going broke. That's going to cost them money.
I reckon that was just a stunt. What they've done is they're paying for November and December, in other words, to the end of the school year, and then they'll wash their hands of it.
Oh, I think that's right.
22 million.
I think that's right.
Otherwise, it's going to cost them $1 billion a year plus
to keep those childcare centres going.
And I think they're just going to say, sort it out.
But Wayne Swan, you raise a fair point. Wayne Swan is a treasurer who came into office only 12 months ago and is immediately confronted with the greatest economic crisis we've seen, certainly in modern times. It's not the Depression, it's not like the Great Depression, but it is a very serious economic crisis where the IMF, I think last week said, or was it the World Bank, the IMF said that we're going to get negative growth in, the key countries like the US, Japan, through Europe, and we haven't had that since 1945. So this is really tough territory.
Yeah, this is the real thing. But but just to be pedantic and correct you, he didn't come in 12 months ago faced with this.
No.
The problem they've had is that they came in 12 months ago, things were good.
Yep.
And they made all these election promises, and they made all these promises in the first 3 or 4 months of their office before the shit hit the fan. Well, now they can't carry them out.
No, well, I think that one of the things about this economic crisis is it's going to sink governments that don't cope with it very quickly, or alternatively, if governments do cope with it, they're going to look good. Gordon Brown in the UK is an amazing case.
Well, that's just hard to believe.
Where he's gone from being just basically out of office,
absolutely
finished after only 18 months. He wins a by-election last week in Scotland that they weren't expected to win, and he's bounced back and could win the next election.
Because of his economic policy.
He's got, and Gordon Brown, of course, was Chancellor of the Exchequer,
yes,
the equivalent to Wayne Swan's
Treasurer.
Position for almost 10 years. But coming back to Wayne,
that makes my point about experience, perhaps.
I think you've got a point about Wayne Swan. I think the last week when he fluffed his lines,
yeah.
I think is not reassuring to a public that's looking to their leadership at the moment and almost hanging on their every word.
And I'll tell you what, the government, of course, constantly says this has been caused by overseas factors and we're doing the best we can. I think the truth with the Australian voter is it's a hip pocket vote. And if people's house prices go down, if they lose their houses, if they lose their jobs, they're going to kick Labor out for another 10 years.
Well, Malcolm Turnbull said last week that Kevin Rudd was essentially economically incompetent, didn't know what he was doing. I think when Turnbull makes a criticism like that, it probably does have some cachet given his experience in the banking sector and his banking experience.
But even if that was not the case, the point I'm trying to make is that I don't think any government, unless they get this right, and I don't think they can, is going to possibly lose the election just over this, in the same way that they say Bush lost the election. Right? Now, when we discussed Bush last week, we thought, or I thought anyway, that the Iraqi war was probably the underlying problem, but the exit polls were saying the economy. Now, what's it going to be like if it's only half as bad as everybody predicts for the next election? They will blame Rudd.
One of the keys to this is next year's budget. This will be one of the most watched budgets in modern Australian history.
And the most difficult.
And the most difficult. I mean, I worked in Canberra for John Fay from 96 to 99, who was finance minister, and there were, the budget went from deficit, $10.6 billion deficit left by the Labor government, into surplus, and I think they ran surpluses every year bar one.
And that was because of your work.
All my work, Peter.
Yes.
All my work. Not the treasurers, not the finance minister.
No, it was
all
my
your
work. That's just fantastic.
So I should be in Wayne Swan's position. But
you should be so lucky.
I said that's right. But one of the issues that Wayne Swan's got is this is a treasurer dealing with a set of circumstances that we haven't had to deal with in this country since the 1990-91 recession.
Yes.
That is declining revenues, big expenditure commitments, and financial markets that get easily spooked, and more importantly, the average punter that gets easily spooked.
Well, the punter's got a lot to be spooked about at the moment, I think. And so you look at the other end of it, the punter's end of it, you look at infrastructure. Now here in Victoria, the railways can't even get the people back from the races. So the transport system in Victoria is dying, the health system's dying, water is a massive problem. Now, we've said many times on this program, the Victorian government's going to have to spend a lot of money on state infrastructure. Okay, that's fine, but the money was going to, in the end, come from the Commonwealth. Now it won't.
No. Well, not only in Victoria, but New South Wales is a basket case. Most of the other states are basket cases.
Well, with New South Wales, yes, but there's a real risk, I think, the New South Wales economy will pull the rest of the economy down.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk to Julie Novak, research fellow from the IPA, and particularly want to ask her about what we've just touched on, and that is, what is the impact for state governments? Because you've got a series of state governments around Australia which are going to an election in the next 1 to 2 to 3 years. All Labor governments, except now Western Australia. And this could really, this economic crisis could really spell a death knell for those governments. So when we come back, Julie Novak.